A man is sprinting through a dark forest in Ireland, visibly terrified. He keeps encountering signs that say, "Point of no return," each accompanied by different numbers that appear to indicate directions or distances. Yet no matter how hard he tries, he cannot get away. Darkness swiftly closes in around him and a flock of birds flutters overhead. He then tumbles into a pit, and the very next moment, an invisible force seizes him and pulls him away. Meanwhile, elsewhere in Ireland, there is an artist named Mina who currently works at a pet store. One day, her boss asks her to deliver a rare parrot to a zoo in a neighboring city. Mina agrees and takes the bird home for the night. While talking to it, she mentions that her mother passed away 15 years ago. Suddenly, the parrot replies. Later that evening, Mina puts on a wig and heads to a bar, introducing herself to a stranger under a made-up name and claiming she is a ballerina. In the morning, she apologizes to the parrot for her behavior, admitting that the real version of herself probably wouldn't be very likable. Then she sets off on her journey. On the way, her sister Lucy calls, reminding her that she has a family and nieces who are waiting for her. Mina continues driving until she finds herself on a remote road that leads into a dense old forest. Without warning, her car breaks down, and she also loses all phone reception. Taking the parrot's cage with her, she steps onto the road to look for help. The forest is dark and deserted, and when she returns to where she left her vehicle, the road itself seems empty. Undeterred, Mina walks further, chatting with the bird to keep her spirits up. She suggests naming it Darwin. Suddenly, she sees a woman sprinting past and decides to follow her. She eventually catches up to the woman near a small cabin in the woods. The woman quickly opens the door and instructs Mina to come inside if she values her life. Naturally, Mina rushes in. The older woman's name is Malene, and she lives there with two young people named Carrara and Daniel. Malene immediately orders Mina to stand in front of a mirror, explaining that the watchers cannot enter, but only observe from outside each night after sundown. As Mina stands by the mirror, she hears what sounds like applause. Malene confirms that the watchers are applauding the arrival of a newcomer. In the morning, Mina declares that she plans to leave. Although the others insist it is impossible to escape, she heads into the forest anyway. Malene catches up, warning that the woods trigger hallucinations, but one can still survive by following certain guidelines. She explains that the signs scattered around mark the boundary from which a person can get back to the cabin before nightfall. Beyond that line, there's no return. They were placed by a man referred to as the Professor, but no one knows where he might be now. That night, Daniel puts on a performance for the watchers, presenting Mina as the newcomer. They want her to continue acting as she normally would. Meanwhile, Carrara turns on some music and dances, as she does each evening. Mina, on the other hand, finds discs with recordings of what appear to be dating or relationship TV shows. The next morning, she and Carrara venture out to gather medicinal herbs. Carrara shares that her missing husband asked her to watch over Daniel, then left to search for an exit from the forest and never returned. Carrara also reveals they discovered eerie burrows spread throughout the forest, where the watchers hide during the day. She believes she has been stuck in the cabin for about 5 months. Later, Malene sets out the rules for survival. Never go outside at night, never open the door to anyone, and always remain near a source of light. Enjoying the story so far? Subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support powers our adventures. Don't forget to hit the bell so you never miss an update. Now, let's dive back into the adventure. Life at the cabin settles into a strange routine of identical days. Mina spends her time watching the endless TV programs and often stands before the mirror, seemingly transfixed. One day she taps on the mirror, and at that exact moment, someone knocks on the door. Malene orders everyone to freeze, and the knocking stops. The following day, Mina and Daniel go hunting. Daniel confides that Malene used to work at a university and acts as though she knows everything. She has, however, lived in the cabin the longest. Daniel himself has been there for 8 months and has never encountered anyone else. After hearing his story, Mina convinces him to help her investigate one of the forest's strange burrows. Using a rope, Mina descends into it. She finds old belongings, newspapers, toys, pieces of electronics, and an old bicycle. She fastens it to the rope and sends it up. Suddenly, unnerving sounds, similar to those the group hears outside the cabin at night, echo from the darkness. As Mina shouts for help, the rope falls at her feet. She manages to climb back into the light and leaves the dangerous place with Daniel, carrying the items they salvaged. Once they examine the discovered objects, Mina suggests they might use the bicycle to escape, but Malene reacts with a strange mix of fear and anger. In the meantime, Daniel manages to assemble a makeshift surveillance system from the electronic parts and sets up a camera near the cabin door. That night, everything proceeds as usual, and at some point, there is knocking at the door. Daniel suspects it might be a person. Malene forbids answering, but then they hear Carrara's husband's voice. Desperate, Carrara asks the voice a question about the book she is reading, something only her husband would know, but it remains silent. Although it fails to answer, the man outside pleads to be saved. Carrara insists on checking the camera, and when the figure leans in toward the lens, something drags him abruptly into the forest. Instantly, loud raps on the mirror begin, stronger than ever before. Malene quickly positions herself between the mirror and the others, and the knocking ceases. In the morning, Malene throws the bicycle back into the burrow, demanding everyone follow her rules. Later, Mina recalls her sister and mother taking them on a drive many years ago. The day was lovely, and Mina rolled down the window. Her mother had asked her to close it because the wind was bothering her, but Mina ignored the request, imitating her mother's voice in jest. This caused her mother to become distracted from the road, resulting in a tragic accident. To this day, Mina feels responsible for what happened. Winter arrives. The days grow shorter, the nights become colder, and food supplies dwindle, causing friction among the cabin's residents. One day, Carrara ventures into the forest, and Mina chases after her. Carrara confesses she believes her husband might truly have been at the door that night. They rush back when they hear Daniel's screams. Furious at Malene and Mina for not opening the door, Daniel and Carrara remain inside while the two women hide under a tree. Moments later, spider-like creatures, tall and unnatural, emerge from the trees, creeping toward the cabin windows with piercing, eerie cries. The watchers stare intently at Daniel and Carrara. Outside, Mina and Malene can only wait for the creatures to leave so they can return safely. Once the watchers depart, the women dash to the cabin door begging to be let in. Daniel refuses. Mina pleads with him, sharing her guilt over her mother's death, explaining that such a burden would haunt him if he let others die now. Finally, Daniel allows them to enter. All four quickly stand before the mirror, hoping to prove to the watchers that everyone is where they belong. Malene then admits she tried to shield them from certain truths. She once taught history and mythology and, unlike the others, came to this place by choice. Only after arriving did she realize how dangerous it was. She confesses that one evening she went hunting alone and glimpsed herself at sunset, not an exact copy, but something nearly identical. The Watchers, she explains, are an ancient race known by many names: changelings, winged ones, fairies. They observe people so they can imitate them, and they will never allow any human to leave. 5:59. Just then, they hear their own voices echoing from outside the cabin. Daniel discovers a hatch in the floor that nobody had noticed before. Descending through it, they find a hidden bunker-like room, fortified and stocked with supplies and equipment. Mina switches on an old computer and plays a video recorded by the so-called professor, Rory Kill Martin. He was the first person to research the Watchers. In 1979, he stumbled upon this strange place, which he dubbed Wonderland. Each evening, the Watchers came to his window to study him. For years, no one believed his accounts, and other scholars ridiculed him. 0629. He built this bunker with the help of men from distant villages, people who were often alone or had poor reputations, so their disappearances wouldn't raise alarm. Each night, he lured them to dine outdoors, all the while hiding inside to observe how the Watchers would react. Thus, this hideout was built on blood. Eventually, a watcher appeared to him in the form of a red-haired girl, seeming different from the others, gentler, more curious, and less threatening. He realized that if he could uncover the fairy's secrets, he might even conquer death. He did the unthinkable. He trapped this girl in a cage to study her. Though at times she shifted into a terrifying shape with elongated arms, she also showed signs of listening and communicating with him. She even seemed to grow close to him. But the professor admitted he learned little of real value and was prepared to end his life. He revealed he hid a boat by the river, calling it the only escape route. He said to follow the birds. He then implored anyone who might find his messages to visit his university office and destroy all the documents. In his final video entry, Kill Martin is seen climbing out of the bunker amid gunshots. After that, there is only silence. Realizing this may be their last night in the forest, Carrara switches on music. She asks Daniel to dance, but Daniel appears sad about the thought of leaving. He confides that he comes from a broken family and has nowhere to go. Carrara assures him that, for the time being, he can stay with her until they figure out a path forward. They've become good friends and should support each other. In the morning, the group sets off, using the professor's instructions and Mina's parrot, whom she asked to guide them, to find the river. After following the signs, they come upon a massive stone disc on the ground, covering a giant tunnel. Mina explains these are the remains of the last of the ancient fairy folk, once friendly with humans. Over countless centuries, their goodwill turned to hatred. They are forced to remain here by ancient magic, so the group must flee quickly. The travelers walk all day, but evening descends without any river or boat in sight. Rain starts to pour, and despair sets in, until they notice large flocks of birds flying in one direction. They chase after the birds and finally arrive at the river. The women hurry into the boat, but Daniel hears someone calling his name, Carrara's husband J.N., and believes the man has somehow survived. Ecstatic, Daniel rushes back, but it turns out to be a changeling. Mina, and Carrara frantically scream for Daniel to run. He doesn't listen and is attacked by the Watcher, which then takes on Daniel's form. Heartbroken, the women push off and sail down the river. Sometime later, the three awaken in the boat and discover they have returned to civilization. They stop a bus and ride into the city, listening to music and slowly realizing the ordeal is over. Soon after, Mina visits the university where Kill Martin once worked, pretending to be his niece so she can access his office and fulfill his final request. There, she finds more documents, photographs, and another recording in which he elaborates on the fairies, mentioning there are still half-blood children in the world. Sifting through a stack of photos, Mina seems stunned by what she sees. That same evening, Mina visits Carrara's house to show her a picture of Mina found among the professor's things. According to Kill Martin's records, Mina was actually his wife and supposedly died years ago. Realizing the Mina who lived with them in the cabin was a special fairy capable of moving around during the day, Mina concludes she was the same red-haired fairy Kill Martin once captured, but could not bring himself to kill. Afterward, the two hear a car pull up, and the real Carrara steps out. The Carrara Mina has been talking to is an imposter, a fairy in disguise. Understanding she's been discovered, the fairy knocks Mina unconscious and changes form again, becoming Daniel. It explains that they simply want to exist like any other species, but are forced to live underground due to human hostility. The fairy then takes on Kill Martin's appearance and approaches Mina, intending to kill her. But Mina reminds the creature that other half-human, half-fairy individuals might still be out there, and that it was not fair of humans to banish the fairies in the first place. The fairy softens, unfurls its wings, and acknowledges that Mina may be right. It then flies away into the night. Mina revives Carrara, and the next day, she finally reunites with her twin sister Lucy. Free at last from her guilt over their mother's accident, she recounts what happened in the forest, though she can still sense Mina's presence, often taking on different human forms.